Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We are now on the other side of the Super Bowl, and everybody is in off-season mode. The off-season is officially here in full. Obviously, on this channel, we've been warming up on the off-season for weeks now, but everybody is now on the same page. And today, we move on to another group of positions. These positions are going to be ones where the Seahawks have a moderate level of need. Yes, we need to get better, but it's not desperate like it is at the other positions that I've been talking about for the last week or so. So these are positions where improvement is needed, but we're still doing okay at it as of right now. It's not a completely, oh my God, we need to immediately invest a ton of resources into it thing. We're talking about wide receiver. So wide receiver, generally speaking, is a position I think you're better off figuring out in the draft, but there are going to be some good free agent receivers in this class, and we should at least talk about them and at least consider filling the need via free agency. So you look at the Seahawks right now, you've got Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. That's great. That's awesome. Both those guys, incredible, special players, doing everything that we could have ever hoped they would do when we drafted them. They're making big money. They're earning big money. But then after that, you've got guys like Dwayne Eskridge. And then you've got guys like... Do we have anybody else on the roster right now after Dwayne Eskridge? I don't even know, because Goodwin's a free agent, obviously. Technically, Cade Johnson is a free agent, although we should have no problem retaining him. Penny Hart's a free agent. So there's not a whole lot going on behind Metcalf and Lockett right now. So we need to get better in terms of our depth, and we need to get better in terms of our top end after Metcalf and Lockett. We need to have more reliable receivers, and we need to have guys with at least something positive to bring to the table. So let's take a look at this free agency class of receivers. Understand that I'm already going into this knowing and completely understanding of the fact that we can't go crazy here. There's just no way. And we shouldn't. It wouldn't make any sense, right? We're not going to spend huge money on a free agent receiver when we already have Lockett and Metcalf making big money. So no Juju Smith-Schuster, no Jacoby Myers, no Alan Lazard. Those guys are going to get the big bucks. Don't ask about those guys. There's no way it makes any sense on this team with this roster. So those three guys off the table, because I think those three guys are the guys who are going to command pretty big free agency dollars. Let's look at some guys who could be very close to those three guys in terms of their production, but for one reason or another are not expected to cost nearly as much. For instance, DJ Chark. DJ Chark, he's a relatively prolific receiver. He was a second-round pick not that long ago. He's had good years in the league before. But you take a look at it, you can see the shine is off the apple. He made the Pro Bowl in 2019 for Jacksonville. Not a great situation over there in Jacksonville. He had 1,000 yards and made the Pro Bowl. Seemed like things were going great for DJ Chark. And then 2020... still plays fairly well, still has a pretty good season for the Jags. The next year, he only plays in 4 games, barely produces. The next year, he goes to Detroit, very prolific offense in Detroit, and he didn't play in every game. There was obviously an injury problem there, but at the end of the day, he only had 500 yards. You're looking at a guy who has produced about 650 receiving yards over his last 2 seasons combined. So this is now 3 seasons of DJ Chark not going where his career looked like it was headed after 2019. So this is a guy who's shown he can be a big-time player in this league, but now has not for a few years. So the potential to be a really effective player is there, but because we don't have a lot of confidence that he's going to be able to realize it, probably not going to cost a ton of money. PFF, for whatever it's worth, did think he played quite well in 2022 when he was actually able to play. You go back to 2020, you can see a similar thing. Even though the production was down, you can see that the efficiency, at least in theory, was there, although not as good as he was in 2019. That was his big year where he broke out. But you look at the talent, you look at the things like the speed and size combo, you look at the fact that he was able to produce in a not great situation back in 2019. You look at the age, he's going to be 27 when the season starts, or actually a little shy of 27. It makes sense that this is a guy you could get who has a non-zero chance of becoming a star. And this is kind of what I'm targeting here. I don't want to go get the stars that are going to cost too much money. I want to get the guys who maybe could be a star, but it seems unlikely, therefore they're not going to get the big money. Now, Spotrac estimates his market value to be about 3 years, 28.8 million. So basically $9.5 million a year. I don't buy it because he's had 3 relatively disappointing years. I look at DJ Chark and I see somebody like maybe 2 years 10. Maybe you could go like 2 years 12 just because he didn't. I mean, he has excuses, or at the least explanations, why his production has been down the last few years. But it's hard for me to believe anybody's going to give him $10 million a year when he is so far removed from putting up those big numbers. All right, another name here would be Marvin Jones. This guy is more in the vein of a capable, reliable veteran. This is not somebody with superstar upside. His days of being even a star-level player are pretty deep in the rearview mirror. He's about to turn 33. He's bounced around the league a little bit. He's had very good seasons in this league. He had an 1,100-yard season in 2017 with Stafford. He had almost another 1,000-yard season with Stafford in 2020. He went to Jacksonville and immediately became a really productive receiver for Lawrence's rookie year. So, excuse me. Marvin Jones has been a really prolific receiver in this league for many years now. Never made a Pro Bowl, but he's had some years where his production has been of a roughly Pro Bowl level. And at this point, if you get him, you can say, well, he's not going to be a star for you. There's really no chance of that. But he should be a reliable target. He should reliably give you solid quality production. And if you've got an offense where you've got Lockett and Metcalf, because remember, as of right now, Lockett and Metcalf play mostly on the outside, but Lockett's skill set easily lends itself to the slot. So you can move Lockett to the slot all day if you get another outside receiver, which Marvin Jones would likely be. And you can say, okay, if Lockett's getting his 1,000 yards and Metcalf's getting his 1,000 yards, Marvin Jones can get you his 500 if he plays the full season probably. Age is obviously becoming a little bit of a concern. PFF still thinks he's playing fine. They gave him a slightly above average grade in 2022. Now, there is some slippage. You look at the previous years before that, you can see better results. But Marvin Jones has something left in the tank, it seems to me. And Spotrac says you're not going to have to spend big money. He's in that AJ Green right before retirement phase of his career. They're estimating 2 years, $7 million, so $3.5 million a year. I think that's a pretty reasonable price for a guy who I think if you get him and if he stays healthy is good for a relatively efficient 450 to 500 yards. And again, I don't expect him to play in every game. When I say healthy, I mean somewhere around 13 to 15 games. I'm not expecting most players to play all 17 games outside of like quarterbacks and offensive linemen. So, yeah, Marvin Jones, good option. This one's really interesting. Deonte Harty of the New Orleans Saints. Interesting case here. Born Deonte Harris. You guys might remember him by that name a little bit better. But Deonte, whatever it is now. Interesting opportunity here to maybe latch on to something that is starting to become special right before he actually ascends. Harty burst onto the scene in 2019 as an elite punt returner. He actually made the All-Pro team as the punt returner that year. And then over the next couple of years, he started to become a bigger part of the Saints offense. And you can see in 2021, he had ascended to the point where he had almost 600 receiving yards. And he had, well, actually over 600 yards from scrimmage, and was starting to become an important part of that Saints offense. Where even though he's small, he's like 5'6", 175 pounds, something like that. it seemed like he was actually starting to become an impact player on the offensive side of the ball as well. Then he got hurt in 2022, barely played, only caught 2 passes all year, and everything kind of got put on hold. Now he's a free agent. The Saints don't have any money, so he's probably going to be available. Now, PFF, I want to go back to 2021 here. This was his breakout year as a receiver where he had the 600 yards. PFF loved him. PFF was all over this guy. So, Deonte Harty, if you get him, not only are you getting an ascendant wide receiver, somebody who might be awesome in the slot, somebody who might really give you a lot there, you're also getting a guy who has proven to be very good returning kicks and punts. And that is something that we kind of need around here. Well, at the very least, the punt part, right? Again, I've said this before. We had the worst punt return unit in the league last year in terms of yards. So Deonte Harty might be worth a little bit more than you would normally give a receiver because he's also adding value as a punt returner. Spotrac, and this is another thing that I'm not really buying. 3 years, 25.5, $8.5 million per year. Not after basically missing all of 2022. I doubt it. Not when he's already an acquired taste due to his size. Deonte Harty, I'm thinking more along the lines of something like, maybe he gets the 3 years, but it would be probably something like 18 million at most, if I had to guess. The only way his asking price goes up here would be if there's just no good receivers out there and everybody starts overpaying like crazy because, that's the receiver who's just happens to be there right now. We all have to throw a ton of money at him, kind of like what happened with Christian Kirk. All right. Mecole Hardman, this is another example of a guy who probably has some star potential in him, but we just haven't seen it yet. Mecole Hardman was a 2nd-round pick by the Chiefs a handful of years ago, so the talent is there, the ability is there, and it seemed like 2022 was going to be the year of Mecole Hardman, where he was going to become an ascendant receiver. You can kind of see him slowly working his way up in that Chiefs offense. 2019, 540 yards. The next year, 560. The next year, almost 700. He's almost there. He's adding value as a special teamer as well. Like, this Mecole Hardman guy is legit. He's helping an elite offense. And then they trade Tyreek Hill. And it's like, okay, Mecole Hardman, it's your time to shine. You're going to be part of the crew that helps replace Tyreek Hill. Only played in 8 games, caught 25 passes, less than 300 yards. Didn't happen. Obviously, the talent is there. Obviously, there's been some pretty good production. But when you're playing with Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, for the first 3 years, Tyreek Hill, for you to not be able to crack 700 receiving yards in any 1 year it's a disappointment. And it's going to leave some people wondering what you are as a player. Obviously, you were good enough to go in late 2nd round in the draft, but that's not really going to do a whole lot when you got to play on easy mode in Kansas City and your production is 2,000 yards in 4 seasons. So Mecole Hardman has the talent. There are some clear signs of him being able to produce, but didn't happen. PFF actually thought that when he did play in 2022, he was quite effective and efficient. He was also used on jet sweeps and fly sweeps a decent amount. You can see that overall, his efficiency numbers from PFF are actually consistently solid throughout his career. So all we're missing is the volume. Now, this is where things get hard. Mecole Hardman, according to Spotrac, is in line for 4 years, $41.5 million. I doubt Kansas City can give him that. I'm wondering if anybody's going to give him that. This is a guy who's never had more than 700 yards in a season, and he's playing with the best quarterback and the best offensive coach in the league, probably. So hard for me to believe anybody's going to give 8 figures a year to a guy who got to live that life and couldn't hack it with the big numbers. So Mecole Hardman, maybe more like 2 years, 12 million, something like that, I think. So those would be my chief guys to take a look at here in terms of being able to get them for a more reasonable cost. I think some of these guys are going to be reasonable. I think these projections are off. And if they are off, as I suspect, then I would definitely be interested. More videos later today. Let me know what you think. Go Hawks.